Your stories.
Your freedom.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Welcome, everybody. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. Taking your calls live for the next 2 hours. 855-4-SCHIFF, 855-4-SCHIFF. Well, a lot to talk about today. We've got the Republican debates, not only the debates, but the straw poll that we had in Florida, where Herman Cain was the big winner. But, of course, all the media attention wasn't on the fact that Cain won, but on the fact that Rick Perry didn't. Talk about spin. Also, we continue to get a lot of volatility in the metals market. Gold and silver down big again today. The CME has increased again the margin requirements on both gold and silver, making it harder for speculative players to maintain their long positions. And given the fact that the market has already come down, you've got a big decline again in gold prices down. I'm looking at the ETFs, GLD, down almost another $40 today. Silver down over $2, down under that $30 support level, down at around 28. Gold around 1550 or so. Looking at these ETFs, the gold stocks faring much better today. The Huey index is barely down. In fact, it's been positive some parts of the day, even though the metals itself haven't been anywhere near a positive. Basically, though, I think that it kind of stresses the importance of not using leverage. And I came out with my gold scam report, which if you haven't read that, you can download it for free at goldscams.com. But one of the scams I warned about was leverage. Some of the gold and silver metal companies were encouraging people to use a lot of leverage in their silver and gold purchases, and that is really going to come back to bite people who bought. Anybody, if you bought silver at $40, 5-to-1 levered from some of these firms, you're getting a margin call already, and so that is a thing that you want to avoid. And why it's so important not to be utilizing margin leverage. I mean, yes, it seems very tempting when the salesman talks about how much extra money you can make, but it turns the precious metal investing into something that is inherently far more speculative than it need to be. And so it's important. Now, obviously, after a big drop like this, I mean, to the extent that you want to speculate and use leverage, it's much better to do it after a big washout. But even if you're going to use leverage for precious metals, there is no reason to ever use a leverage program from a bullion company. I mean, if you want leverage, just go and use the futures markets. It's a much more cost-efficient way to do it. But, of course, you move out of the realm of being a long-term saver by saving in precious metals to being a short-term speculator with a lot more risk. But, hey, there's more reward if you time it right. But it's always easier said than done. But anyway, I want to go back a little bit more towards politics and talk about the presidential race and how it's shaping up. It's very interesting too to see the coverage of the Iowa straw poll. I would have thought that there would have been a lot more Herman Cain on the Sunday morning talk shows. Instead, the main focus was on Rick Perry and the fact that he didn't win, rather than the guy who actually did win. In fact, I forget who in particular said this, but somebody basically said that they thought the reason that Herman Cain won was because the Florida delegates at the straw poll were so unhappy with all the candidates, I guess including Herman Cain, but they were so unhappy that they just registered a protest vote by voting for Herman Cain. Now, I don't know how, everybody in Florida managed to coordinate on this and agree that, hey, let's just send a big protest that we don't like anybody, and we'll just vote for the black guy. I mean, is that what people think? I mean, is that what whoever said it really thinks that they? I mean, how about maybe they just liked him. Maybe they believed in him and they thought he'd be a good president. I don't know if you've ever seen Herman Cain speak in person. I've heard him speak several times in person, and he is the most charismatic speaker of all of the candidates. He is a great speaker, and he's got a good background. I mean, I actually think that he is very electable if he got the Republican nomination. I don't know why there's this foregone conclusion among the media that he's unelectable. Why is he unelectable? I mean, is it because he's black he's unelectable? I mean, Obama's president, he's black, or, is it because he's never held elected office? I mean, that's probably a plus in this environment. In fact, what about Obama? I mean, Obama, he was a senator for one term. It's not like, that's it. That's all he was. He didn't even finish his full term. Yeah, he was a community activist, but what the hell does that mean? So he was a one-term senator, and not even a full one term. He didn't even complete it. And so how much? I would much rather have Herman Cain's job background. And one of the reasons a lot of people like Mitt Romney is because he comes from the private sector, but he comes from Wall Street. It's a lot easier for the left to vilify a money guy, a Wall Street guy, an M&A guy. In fact, you could make an argument that he destroyed jobs. I think it's a false argument, but they did the same thing here in Connecticut in the gubernatorial race when we had a governor who had been involved in mergers and acquisitions, and they focused on some of the companies that he bought up where people were laid off. I'm sure they can do the same thing with what was going on at Bain Capital. I'm sure there are situations where companies were bought, and jobs were let go. And then he's on the defensive explaining that. But you can't make those arguments. Herman Cain is in the pizza business. Everybody understands that. He's a restaurateur. So he made his living on Main Street, not on Wall Street. Right? Pizza's a lot more popular than investment banking. So I think as far as an entrepreneur or a businessman, he's got a better background. And I think it'd be a great race to see him run against Obama. Certainly, it would be a difficult one. It's going to be harder for the left to try to paint the Republicans as a bunch of racists because they don't want to vote for Barack Obama. How could you say that if they're voting for somebody who's blacker than Obama? So it really would be interesting to just cut the legs out from under the left, who likes to constantly play the race card, which is, I think, what they're doing too when they're diminishing Herman Cain's victory, or saying, well, yes, the Republicans couldn't have possibly voted for Herman Cain because they liked him. After all, they're just a bunch of racists in the Republican Party, so they just voted to him to show their disgust, that they're so unhappy with their choices that they decided to vote for Herman Cain en masse as a protest. That's what's racist, to just assume that people aren't voting for the guy because they like the guy, because they thought he would make a good president. Anyway, I don't know if anybody else wants to comment. Also, I want to talk when we get back from the break about how Saturday Night Live depicts the Republican candidates, because it really is a good insight into the psyche of the left on how they view these candidates. Anyway, don't go away. We'll be right back. This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. To President Obama, Secretary Geithner, Madam Pelosi, and all of the socialist econ professors across America, we're sorry. Peter Schiff is back on the air.
And this is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. And, the morning rally in the stock market is fading fast. The S&P is already negative for the day. The Dow was up better than 100 points, now only up about 25 points. Gold now down close to $50. The selling pressure on the metals continues. Gold stocks have now turned negative as well, although down less than 2%, not as much as the metal itself. The dollar has also regained some ground. It was weaker coming into the morning. It is now reversed course. The euro, which was stronger, is now down below the 134 handle. Only currencies really up today now are the Japanese yen and the pound sterling, up a little bit against the dollar. Other commodity currencies hitting, New Zealand dollar hitting a new 52-week low. It was just at a 52-week high a week and a half ago or so. It's been a huge decline. And remember, there is a lot of leverage players in all these currency markets, and so I think this volatility is certainly being exacerbated by the spec money in the market. But, it's interesting. There was a lot of talk over the weekend in Europe about what to do about the European crisis. I thought probably the most interesting aspect of it was Timothy Geithner, over there in Europe, trying to give advice on what they should do. I particularly like the comments by the minister from Austria, who's basically lecturing Geithner. Hey, what right do you have to give us any advice? Here's a quote from Austrian minister said, quote, "I find it peculiar that even though the Americans have significantly worse fundamental data than the Eurozone, that they tell us what we should do." Yeah, I mean, who is Geithner to talk? I mean, we've got our own disaster on our hands that we refuse to deal with, yet we're over there in Europe lecturing them on what they should do. Not that I'm saying that Europe is doing everything right, but we're not doing anything right. So who are we to talk? Anyway, I digressed a minute because I was trying to get back on the subject of politics and the debates. I don't know if anybody saw the Saturday Night Live over the weekend, but they did spoof. The opener was a spoof of the Republican debate in Florida, although for some reason they forgot to spoof Gary Johnson. He was actually missing. I think they could have made it a little bit funnier than it was. What I thought was very interesting was the way they depicted Ron Paul, and again trying to hammer in on the fact that everybody now in the media claims that Ron Paul believes that if somebody is young and doesn't have insurance, that we should just let him die. That Ron Paul believes that, hey, if you don't have insurance and you get sick, that you just need to die. And, of course, that's not the case. I played this down. Ron Paul doesn't think that people who are sick should just be allowed to die. He thinks that people should help and that they will help. And he points out that before the government got involved, sick people always got help. They got help from the private sector voluntarily, not through government coercion. There were always doctors that were willing to take care of the sick for free, and it was a lot easier to do it before they had all this legal liability and all the insurance involved and malpractice. And, of course, private charities. There was much more money available for private charities before the government started assuming that role and taking everybody's money. But the way Saturday Night Live tried to depict it was they asked Ron Paul, hey, what if you were walking by and there was a building that was on fire, would you want to put it out? And he said, no, I wouldn't put it out, And then the guy said, well, what if the building were full of puppies? And he's like, no. And then it's like, well, what if the puppies had little bows on? And he keeps saying no. And they said, well, what if the puppies had their noses pressed up against the window? And, the Congressman Paul keeps saying no. And they said, well, what if the puppies were making a noise like this? And then they have Ron Paul says, no, I am a purist. The puppies must die. Again, just like the health care. It's just the left just doesn't understand that Ron Paul doesn't want the puppies to die. He wants to save the puppies. In fact, he doesn't want the puppies to be on fire. You see, what the liberals don't really understand is free markets will put fires out, and they'll put them out a lot more efficiently than the government. See, the problem is, in that example, the reason that house is burning is probably some bureaucrat lit it on fire. That's the problem. When you put the government, and I'm not talking about fire departments, I'm just using fires metaphorically, but when you put the government in charge of fires, they end up setting fires, not putting them out. And then the private sector would put them out very efficiently. I mean, do you think people are just going to watch a building burn with a bunch of puppies in it? No. But if you put the government in charge, who knows? By the time the puppies might burn. It's just that the liberals can't understand this, and that there's private sector charity. And maybe it's because a lot of people, a lot of liberals, know themselves that they wouldn't lift a finger to help their fellow man, and so they assume that everybody else is just as mean-spirited. The fact is, Americans are very charitable. They've always been charitable, and if the government left us alone, we'd be a lot more charitable because there'd be a lot more money. And of course, when the government takes, institutionalizes, socializes charity, the charities maybe get 10 cents on the dollar. The rest of it goes up in a bureaucratic, abyss. Whereas the private sector is the reverse. 90% of the money would go to the recipients, and only a small fraction would be used to administer the programs. But that's something that Ron Paul probably has to do a good job of articulating, how much better, how much more would be available in resources to assist the poor. But more importantly, there would be a lot fewer poor people. It's the government anti-poverty programs that create the poverty that they pretend to cure. If we didn't have the government involved in the poverty business, there would be a lot less poverty. And yes, there would be some people, of course, there are always people that fall on hard times through no fault of their own, but they don't need a government safety net. That's the point. Society, free people will be compassionate and will provide that charity. You know, liberals always underestimate the generosity of their fellow Americans, maybe because in their own minds they know that they're the ones that are so stingy. And I think the only way that the rich will help the poor is if they steal the money from them and do it that way. And that is clearly not the case, and history shows that that is not the case. Anyway, let me see if I can grab a phone before the next break. We have a guest coming up. Online is Herman from Queens, New York. Herman, welcome to the show.
Yes, hello, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that's a great segue, actually, because over the weekend on Meet the Press, Bill Bennett was on, who was the former Secretary of Education, and this is a staggering statistic that I actually fell out of my couch when I heard this, that 54% of black fourth graders actually can't read. So we've handed education over to the government, and now this is what we get. Now, as far as, you know, jobs and education are concerned, now you say that a lot of the jobs, well, you say that, you know, education is necessary for a lot of the jobs that we need. So why is it that, you know, every time I watch CNBC or Bloomberg or, you know, these entrepreneurs come on, they say that we don't have enough educated people for the jobs that they need to fill?
Well, a lot of it doesn't mean educated. A lot of them, they're talking about trained, prepared for the job. I mean, just having a degree doesn't prove anything. I mean, there certainly is no shortage of people with degrees in this country. I mean, there are plenty of college kids that can't get jobs. I mean, they've got degrees, but they don't have any real skills that enable them to get a job. Now, of course, a lot of the reasons that the jobs don't exist is because the government, you know, legislated them out of existence. The government has made it very expensive to hire people, has run up the cost of hiring people with all sorts of regulations and taxes and exposing employers to litigation risks. So there are a lot of reasons those jobs are disappearing. But I think what we really need is more on-the-job training, and we're not getting that. We don't get it because of the minimum wage law. We don't get it because of all sorts of things that prevent companies from training people. Because, look, the public schools are never going to do it. You know, those who can do, they don't teach. That's the problem. We've got too many kids trapped in these ineffective government schools, and they are not getting a real education, despite the fact that we're dumping record amounts of money down that rat hole and pretending we're doing it for the good of our kids when our kids are getting the short end of the stick. Anyway, hey, don't go away. We got a great guest coming up. We're going to talk taxes at the other side of this break, so stick around. You're listening to the Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. We now return to the Peter Schiff Show. Call in now, 855-4-SCHIFF. That's 855-472-4433. Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
And this is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. Joining me now is my guest, David Zelig, and David Zelig is a professional federal tax practitioner. He does appear rarely on cable news. He's on Fox Business, talking taxes. And I think that his firm, Zelig & Associates, I think they specialize or represent a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs, the very people that President Obama and the left are claiming are getting away with murder. They're not paying their fair share. They're just a bunch of slackers. Everybody else is doing all the heavy lifting, and these guys have been getting away with murder, and it's about time we ask them to contribute. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much for having me on your program, and by the way, I appreciate your kind sentiments.
Hey, thank you. And hey, by the way, so is there any truth, I mean, from your perspective, I mean, you're filling out taxes, you're helping people pay taxes. Are businessmen getting a break now, or are they just skirting by without paying taxes, or do you think they're paying more taxes than they have been in the past?
That's a fact. Right now, businesses and middle class and upward middle class people are taxed more than ever. What the administration is doing is a deliberate attempt to try to polarize the populace, throw a little red meat out there. It's really not an answer. It's just a facile play for more time.
Yeah, so where is it coming from? Is it all this idea that, well, Warren Buffett, yes, if the only taxes you pay is on interest and capital gains, then in fact you will pay a lower tax if you ignore the fact that you pay taxes as a shareholder of the corporation when they pay the tax. But is that all where it's coming from?
No. From the very beginnings of this administration, there has been a fervent desire to treat long-term capital gains and qualified dividends as regular income, which is actually punitive. I would remind your listening audience that the majority of the people who receive these qualified dividends and such are senior citizens who use them to supplement their income, to pay for housing and food and medication and such. And by denying them this very important credit, you're essentially driving them into the arms of the federal government. You will see a rise in federal assistance, food stamps, the whole bit.
Well, that might be their very objective. I think I know part of the idea here about limiting the charitable deductions. If the government wants people to give less money to charity so that there's less money going to private charity, therefore there's more need for the government to pick up the slack of the diminished giving that higher taxes on the wealthy produces.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because this has been an issue that I have vigorously defended for quite some time. I've been calling for raising the charitable write-off. You see, if a person's in the 35% bracket and they give $100, well, you just do the math. They're writing off 35 cents on the dollar. By making it much more attractive, let's say giving an individual write-off dollar for dollar above the line, the first $150,000, you would see a lot of our social problems quite literally go away overnight, because the private sector is probably better suited to help them.
That's a good. If you turned the deduction into a credit, a dollar for dollar credit, clearly we would rather, if it was a choice between sending $100,000 to my favorite charities or sending $100,000 to the government, obviously I'm going to send it to the charities. Obviously there is a potential for some kind of abuse there or fraud, but if we make sure that it's legitimate charities that are getting the money, obviously it's going to do much better than giving it to the government.
Absolutely, because you no longer have the burden of the administrative costs. Additionally, if you're sending money, let's say, to Washington, for them to distribute those funds in, let's say, a state like Montana, by the time the dollar gets there, it's significantly less. But I think also what has been as pernicious as pancreatic cancer in this equation is you have some people in this administration who don't understand that charitable giving is not only an altruistic endeavor. They're under the impression that if a person gives $100, they don't care about the write-off, and that's the same for a person who gives $100,000. And unfortunately, in the real world, that's just not true. You have people like myself and other, financial attorneys and accountants who will tell an individual who may not be that charitable, this is a good move for you to make, and relying upon that counsel, they'll make the move. If it's no longer attractive, no one suggests it, less money flows into the private sector, more people become dependent on the government, and that skews their figures right now.
Well, a lot of it is basic math, though, regardless. I mean, people, I think, when they make a charitable donation, look at the after-tax cost of the donation. Just like when people buy a house and they look at the mortgage payment, they look at the after-tax cost. So they factor it in. So if somebody is willing to give $10,000 to charity, they're going to give 13 or 14 because it cost them 10. But as you increase or you reduce the deductibility, then people are just going to give less because there isn't an unlimited amount of money. And so if the money is going to go to the government, it can't go to the charity.
That's exactly right. There's another issue that we really should bring to bear about this argument that's being advanced. It's a very convenient dog to keep going after the millionaires and billionaires and say they should pay their fair share. But the reality is, without a firm control of spending, if the government were to seize all of that money, take it in plenary, take every dime every millionaire and billionaire presently has, it does nothing to answer the problem that we presently have. And I have to tell you, and I don't mean this to sound vindictive, but it's as if that Warren Buffett has become a befuddled old man. I don't understand what he's doing, and for him to advance such a ridiculous argument that he pays less taxes than his secretary is just folly. You should reject
I think he wants to be liked, and I think he likes Obama and he wants to help him get reelected, but he's trying to appear to be, he's this rich guy, but he wants people to think, well, but he's different. He's a rich guy with a heart. Why doesn't he defend capitalism? And he's done a lot more for America because he's created wealth, not because of the taxes that he's paid. But what I wanted to ask you, and I tried to ask this woman, I don't know if you saw my testimony from Congress, but there was a woman, again, who was there, who was liberal, saying that, yes, the rich need to pay their fair share. And I tried to ask her, what is that? I mean, what is the fair share that the rich should be paying? And she couldn't answer. I mean, do you have any idea? I mean, what do people think is fair? Because most people who are rich are already paying a lot more taxes than someone in the middle class. So, but what would be a fair amount for a rich person to pay?
Well, first of all, I believe that we're already significantly overtaxed. So if the idea is to get me to say we have to pay more and that'll be fair, I reject that out of hand. What we need to do is remember the big hue and cry that are people who are calling for this, other than this coterie of sycophants around the president, are not paying any taxes. In other words, if you get back more than you pay in, you're not a taxpayer. So you really should not be demanding people who are productive, people who are carrying your water, pay even more. So
yeah, that's what. Yeah, I was saying it's like, you got a bunch of people pulling the wagon, and the people who are riding in the cart are saying that the people pulling it aren't carrying their share of the load, that they need to pull harder. Meanwhile, they're still riding in the wagon. I mean, they got to get out and push and help move the wagon before they criticize the people that are already bearing the load.
Well, that's exactly right. And I have to tell you, the reason why you could not pin that particular woman down was not by happenstance or by chance. That was deliberate, because she knows, as does everybody else who has, imbibed these particular talking points, that the minute they put a percentage on it, people with the most propedeutic understanding of math will realize that won't pay the bills. Let's say you were to say 60% or 70%. If you were to juxtapose that new taxation against present spending or the deficit, you would realize.
Right, but I don't think they can say that. I don't think they can say that and claim it's fair. See, I think they're afraid to put a percentage on because they look ridiculous. I mean, I think what they would want to say is, well, I think the rich should pay a third. That would be fair, a third of their income. So, well, but they already pay more than that. So it's like, because how could you can't say half or 60% and fair at the same time. I mean, how can it possibly be fair that somebody works hard and half the money or more goes to the government? I mean, if you lose money, if I start a new business and I lose money, the government doesn't write a check to pay for half my losses. If you lose money,
not yours. Not yours. There are some businesses that apparently they do.
But yeah, I mean, it's like everybody is in partnership with the government, except the government does none of the work. They don't absorb any of the losses. They don't take any of the liability. But if you have a profit, they want their half. I mean, even the mafia would never do that. The mafia, maybe if they were going to shake you down with protection money, maybe they'd try to get 5 or 10%. I mean, nobody would shake you down like the federal government does.
Well, I think what you're saying echoes a very common sentiment that I don't think the present taxes could make Emperor Nero blush or Caligula blush. We are taxed more than enough. Let's get rid of the word fair because it's very ad hominem and misleading. It is designed to, again, create an us against them mentality, and it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. We shouldn't entertain it. What we should demand is, number one, the repeal of Section 152 in the Internal Revenue Code. That is the provision that allows illegal aliens and others to deduct dependents who live in Mexico, people who never come here. Now, well, let me tell you the numbers about this, and I've been beating this drum for over 24 months.
How about we just repeal the entire code?
Well, wait a minute. Let me at least put these numbers out there.
I know you might not be in favor of that, though, because it might put you out of work, but go ahead.
Well, no, hear me out. We lose approximately $28 billion a year because of this section. In other words, what it does is it allows individuals to claim fraudulent dependents. Each dependent costs $3,650. But what makes it so bad is it lowers the individual's adjusted gross income, allowing them now to receive the earned income credit as well as some child care credits. And nobody wants to touch this except yours truly, David Seelig. As a matter of fact, I challenged any sitting congressman or senator to refute my figures on national television when I was on the Jerry Willis program. Nothing. Crickets. Like I said, I have beat this drum for 24 months, and I will continue to.
But what you're saying is you can deduct, but you're saying if this is an illegal alien deducting Mexican dependents?
That's a fact.
I mean, are illegal aliens filing tax returns? I didn't think they were filing.
Stop right there. They most certainly are. They simply go to the Internal Revenue Service or go online and get a taxpayer identification number. They go.
Well, I'm sure they're not filing if they owe money. They might only be filing to get a refund.
Right. They go on the books for, let's say, 3 days a week, come up with an income at the end of the year of $17,000 with the withholdings. The remainder was never taxed.
Hey, we got to hold for a second. We got a commercial coming up. We'll be right back. This is Peter Schiff on SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. Since the Peter Schiff Show was last on the air, the national debt added another $7.89 million. Luckily, Peter's intelligence is growing twice as fast.
That's incredible.
Welcome back to your source of sanity in an insane world. It's the Peter Schiff Show.
We are back. This is Peter Schiff on the phone with David Seelig, a professional tax practitioner. David, so before the break, we brought up this idea of illegals getting credits for dependents, alleged or otherwise, down in Mexico. It seems like what you're not advocating for is a tax increase. It seems like your people are actually turning the tax code into a way to generate additional welfare payments.
That's exactly right. I mean, go to any immigrant area and you will notice a proliferation of these tax return preparation services. And the reason why that is it's become a cottage industry. It costs us tens of billions of dollars. These individuals understand that they can get something for nothing, and they are complicit. What gets me so angry is they are depicted for time immemorial as victims, when in fact they are volunteers and perpetrators, and we really got to nip it in the bud. Unfortunately, as I said, the administration is trying to curry favor with these bums, and we need to stop it ASAP.
Well, another reason to just tear up the tax code and not even have it, and just have a sales tax or something. That way, if there's anyone in here illegally.
Yeah, I don't agree with that idea, but I do think.
Well, I know. Well, it's bad for business from your. Although accountants can do other things. There's cost accounting. It doesn't have to be. But the fact is that we have to spend as a nation a lot of money to pay people like yourselves to help us understand the tax code and minimize our obligations. We would be much better off as a society if you can devote your talents to something else, if we didn't have to worry about how to minimize our taxes.
Let me tell you, I would like to refute that argument in the best way possible. A lot of people tell me we need to simplify the tax code so I can understand it. Let me tell you something. The tax code works. You don't need to simplify brain surgery so I understand it. All you need to do is survive the operation.
Yeah, but the tax code shouldn't be brain surgery. That's the problem. The government shouldn't be able to tax us in such a complicated way that we need a brain surgeon to pay it. It should be simple and straightforward. It shouldn't be so vague. In fact, I think it's void for vagueness on that legal principle alone.
Well, I'm going to give you that point. You certainly out-finessed me on that one, and it is your show. But I would like to say I do believe in the tax code. However, we got to stop these abuses. The abuses are not taking place by corporate America. The abuses are taking place by failed social programs and different ideologies
don't get me wrong,
that have really stuck it to us.
as long as the tax code is here, I would encourage people to seek out your services to minimize their liabilities. But I would wish that they didn't have to do that. That's the point. I mean, it shouldn't be this way. The founding fathers didn't envision it this way. If they thought there was any chance of this happening, we'd still be part of England. But I want to ask you another question. The idea. What are the ways that the liberals are trying to create this idea that the rich are getting away with murder? Is they try to bring up past periods in our history when tax rates were higher. Of course they never talk about the point where there was no income tax at all, or that when the income tax was first enacted, I think the top rate was 7%. So there were periods of time where there were no taxes at all. But during those periods of time where the tax rates were a lot higher, are you familiar with what the codes were like back then? Because I always say that I don't think anybody paid those high rates. I think it was just there, but I think that people rich...
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what happened. When you have the prohibitive rates, you will see all of a sudden the big earners, the millionaires, disappear quite literally overnight. They will enter into very complex payment schemes, deferred income, various exchanges, the whole 9 yards. Whatever satisfies the letter of the law. And these fall shorts, these people who are looking for something for nothing, will find their situation worsened, did not get better. And that's what we have to be careful of. Remember, this president ran on hope and change. There were times when I was in the Division of Taxation in New York or waiting for a hearing at the IRS, and I would be essentially eavesdropping on somebody who was representing themselves pro se, and they thought they were just going to talk their way out of a debt that they owed on the strength that there was this new sheriff in town. That has proven to be absolutely false and folly. I would say a lot of the people who have been kicked in the patoots the most severely are the people who never anticipated this, and that's the lesson to your listening audience. Let's be careful of unintended consequences, and that's what happens when you do social engineering without considering the ramifications.
Yeah, and the crazy thing to me, too, when the left points to the good old days where the top rate was 70%, the idea that somebody would actually work, that somebody would actually start a business and try to work when they only get to keep 30 cents on the dollar. And that's, of course, before they pay all the sales taxes on whatever they buy or any other taxes. I mean, the nerve of somebody. I mean, talk about, I always hear the left trying to accuse the right of wanting to bring back slavery, which is kind of crazy. But, what do they think we got now? I mean, taking 70%, even 50%, even from somebody? I mean, what is that if not slavery?
Well, it's certainly heavy-handed, and you're not going to get an argument from me. But then again, I have consistently said what we need is a return to generally accepted accounting principles. We need good accountability and financial sense from our elected officials. We must insist that they be good stewards of our money, not just spending it willy-nilly to make a vocal group feel better about themselves, and that's impossible. If they want to feel better about themselves, let them go out and be productive. A hard day's work is probably the best medicine.
Who of all the presidential candidates, who are you supporting?
That's a tough call, because I look at the field presently, and I don't want more of the same. I do not particularly like Mitt Romney. He strikes me as one of these country club type.
Well, we're running out of time. You want to throw out a quick name?
I don't know. Maybe Christie throws his hat into the ring, or
yeah, but Christie ain't running.
To pursue it, or you, I'd go for it.
All right. Remember, if I win, there's no more income tax. But hey, you're a smart guy. You'll find something else to do. We'll reform you. Hey, anyway, thanks for coming on the show. Don't go, everybody else. We have another full hour coming up with the Peter Schiff Show here on SchiffRadio.com, the gold standard in talk radio.
Yeah, you're gonna run it down. And it's over now, you see. It's the last time you're gonna hurt me.
The Peter Schiff Show.
You make no friends in the pits and you take no prisoners. 1 minute you're up $500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they've repossessed your Bentley. Are you with me?
The revolution starts now.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Turn those machines back on!
You are about to enter the Peter Schiff Show.
Show me the money!
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The Peter Schiff Show is on. Call in now. 855-4-SHIP. That's 855-472-4433.
I don't know when they decided that they wanted to make a virtue out of selfishness.
Your money, your stories, your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
And this is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. The second hour of the Peter Schiff Show is underway. We're taking your calls, 855-4-SCHIFF, 855-4-SCHIFF. Anyway, wanted to talk a little bit. We talk a little bit about race, on the show today, particularly with Herman Cain winning the straw poll, not because Herman Cain is black, but because of the media's reaction to people voting for Herman Cain. In particular, too, I wanted to play some sound from a CNN interview on Piers Morgan with actor Morgan Freeman. Again, trying to basically equate the public's dislike of Barack Obama based on the fact that he happens to be black, and that the reason that the public wants him to be a one-termer is because he's a black guy and we need to get rid of him. I remember I played some sound last week, I forget who it was, that said, well, that white people will give black folks one shot, and if they screw up, that's it. But when it comes to other white folks, they're a lot more lenient. They'll give them a lot of tries. And of course, this completely misses the point that Barack Obama's popularity is substantially lower among blacks. It's not just whites who are losing enthusiasm for the president. It's blacks as well. But, of course, if it is that the Republicans are simply so anxious to get rid of Barack Obama simply because he's black, why are they willing to replace him with Herman Cain? Because obviously there were a lot of people down in Florida who who Morgan Freeman believes are racists. Hey, they're voting for a black man. Oh, yeah, of course, they don't really like him because, after all, how could they like him because he's black and they're so racist? So they're just voting for him as a protest because they don't like any of the candidates, including the one they voted for. But anyway, listen to some of this discussion with Morgan Freeman. Here, cut number 2.
Has Obama helped the process of eradicating racism?
Made it worse. Look at the Tea Partiers who are controlling the Republican Party stated, and what's this guy's name? Mitch McConnell. Is that his name, O'Connell?
Yeah. Mitch McConnell, yeah.
Mitch McConnell. Their stated policy, publicly stated, is to do whatever it takes to see to it that Obama only serves one term. What is that? What underlines that? Screw the country. We're going to do whatever we do to get this black man. We're going to do whatever we can to get this black man out of here.
You see, Morgan Freeman, Mitch McConnell isn't saying let's get this black man out of here. Maybe Morgan Freeman hasn't figured this out, but Mitch McConnell is a Republican. He wants to get rid of Obama, not because he's black, but because he's a Democrat, and he's a Democrat who's ruining the country with socialism. The color of his skin doesn't matter. How can Morgan Freeman be so obsessed on race that he can't even see that? It's got nothing to do with what color he is. I mean, so does Morgan Freeman think that the Republicans ought to give Obama a pass because he's black? Should there be affirmative action for black Democrats that, well, hey, if he was a white guy and he was doing such a bad job, we'd really want to get rid of him. But because he's black, we should have some kind of affirmative action program that says if you're a black president and you do a horrible job, we should reelect you anyway just because you're black. Apparently, it seems that's what Morgan Freeman is really saying. And, Morgan Freeman is a great actor. I love seeing him in movies. I don't consider him a black actor. He's an actor. He's a talented guy. How many white people buy tickets to see movies that star Morgan Freeman? If I'm looking at a movie and I'm going through the cable and I'm looking at the cast and I see Morgan Freeman's name, I'm more likely to want to watch it because I say, hey, he's a good guy. He's a good actor. If he's in this film, it's probably a pretty good film. Otherwise, Morgan wouldn't have done it. I mean, here he is. He is succeeding in America, right, because of his talent. America doesn't care that he's black, and we elect a black president, Barack Obama. And what does Morgan Freeman say? That's an example of why there's more racism, that having a black president is bad. It's actually harmed the cause of equality. I mean, come on, give me a break. I guess we can't do anything right, huh? Although not electing Obama was the right thing to do, but it certainly proves that we're not a racist society. I mean, come on. Anyway, here's some more of this stuff. Cut number 3.
Is that necessarily a racist thing?
It is a racist thing.
Is it not just Republicans? Wouldn't they say that about any Democrat?
No, because they would have gotten rid of Bill Clinton if they could have.
But they tried.
They did try, but still. They're not going to get rid of Obama either. I think they'll shoot themselves in the head.
He just refutes his own point by saying they tried to get rid of Bill Clinton. Yes, they did. They tried to get rid of him. And Bill Clinton was white, even though he said he was the first black president. He was, in fact, white, and the Republicans still tried to get rid of him. Can you imagine if Bill Clinton were black, and, the Monica Lewinsky thing came up? I mean, they would have said, oh, this is all racism. They're just after him because he's black. No, they didn't go after him because it was what he did. They went after him. That's what Republicans do. I mean, the Republicans, and I think look, a lot of times the Republicans are a lot to blame too, but you can't expect the Republicans to go easy on a Democrat just because he's black. I mean, is that what he really, really expects? Here, I got one more cut of Morgan Freeman here, cut number 4.
Does it unnerve you that the Tea Party are gaining such traction?
Yes.
Why?
Yes. Well, it just shows the weak, dark underside of America. We're supposed to be better than that. We really are. That's why all those people were in tears when Obama was elected president. Look at what we are. Look at how this is America, And then it just sort of started turning because these people's surface is like stirring up muddy water.
So the Tea Party is the deep, dark underbelly? I mean, what are they, the Ku Klux Klan? I mean, the Tea Party, a lot of these Tea Party guys voted for Herman Cain. I mean, why did they do that? And, of course, has Morgan Freeman ever been to a Tea Party rally? Do you have any idea what's going on there? Or does he just accept Democratic propaganda as to what's going on at the Tea Party? I mean, I went to a lot of Tea Party events in Connecticut. And, these are good Americans. These are rock-solid people who are fed up with government, big government, government spending, taxes, a lack of respect for individual liberty, for the Constitution. It's the Tea Party types that helped build this country. And I'm sure a lot of people who are at the Tea Party are buying tickets to see Morgan Freeman movies. He owes his career, and he lives a pretty good life because a lot of white people are not racist and buy tickets to his movies. Anyway, don't go away. We'll be back. We'll take your calls. This is Peter Schiff on SchiffRadio.com. Stick around.
The Peter Schiff Show. To President Obama, Secretary Geithner, Madam Pelosi, and all of the socialist econ professors across America. We're sorry. Peter Schiff is back on the air.
This is Peter Schiff here at SchiffRadio.com. And hey, just while I'm on the subject of racism and the Democrats fanning the fires of racism, which they tend to do on every occasion, here's a little bit more sound. This is from MSNBC. This is Thomas Roberts, who's the anchor, I guess, on MSNBC. Listen to what he says about Republicans and what they really, really want. Here's cut number 9.
Well, in the phrase of social experimentation, I get out of all of these things that many of these candidates would rather take legislation to build a time machine and go back in time to where we had, no women voting, slavery was cool. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous.
Okay, so Republicans want to go back to the good old days when slavery was cool. Find me one Republican, just one, who is pro-slavery. Find me one. Again, what is this about? It's all about racism, right? Slaves, yes. Back when those black people were in their place back then, right? I mean, come on. This is all Democratic propaganda. You know, the Democrats are the ones that want to return to slavery a lot more than the Republicans, in that they want to enslave the population through taxation. Look, Obama wants to raise taxes on the upper earners, like myself, who are already paying well over 40% of their income in tax right now. And, you know, getting it over 50%, I mean, what is that? You know, isn't that a form of slavery? You know, serfdom, I've mentioned this before. What was the definition of a serf? The government took 25% of what you produce, or not the government, the lord of the manor. You know, I'd have to be emancipated to get to the level of a serf. And so if the government's taking half your money, I mean, isn't it like, I mean, how much more can a slave owner get? You know, as a matter of fact, they have done studies on the economics of slavery. And it has been estimated, and I'm not defending slavery. Slavery is outrageous. It is morally repugnant, and for that reason alone, there should be no slavery. But not only is slavery morally bad, it's just bad business. The fact of the matter is that it's been estimated that 90% of a slave's productivity ultimately was used to sustain the slave, because the person who owned the slave had to feed him, had to provide medical care, you know, leisure. I mean, there are a number of costs. You also had to oversee them. You had to make sure they didn't escape. So, you know, there are a lot of costs associated with enslaving people. Not that it's just bad morally, but it's expensive. And one of the reasons that slavery died out all over the world was that basically it's a lot less expensive to hire somebody than to enslave them. You know, if you pay them a wage and they're going to get paid based on productivity, they're going to work a lot harder. You know, people will work more if they want to work, if they're working for themselves, if they get to keep the fruits of their labor, they're far more productive. You know, you think they could have had slaves working in all the factories up in the north? Of course it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked at all. But my point is that the U.S. government, through taxation, is keeping a lot more of the productivity of the typical American than did a southern plantation owner, what he kept of the productivity of his slaves. So again, you know, the ones that are closer to slave society are the Democrats, who want to enslave everybody with taxation. They think they own our labor, they own our wages, they want to spend the money the way they think it should be spent. They don't want to leave it in the hands of the people who earned it. Anyway, let me go take a break and go to the phones. Meantime, you know, we are getting a bit of a rally, I'm noticing, in the metals market. It's hard to see, hey, a rally with silver still down $1 an ounce, but of course earlier this morning it was down $3, so it's down, it's cut losses by 2/3. Gold now is down about $25 on the GLD. It was down $50 just a half hour ago or so. So we are getting a lot of volatility. Stock market back in the green as well. The Dow now back up over 100 points, up 127. And the dollar is back in the red again after rallying. Although, let me see, the euro. The euro is actually, where is it? The euro is basically unchanged now. But other currencies are higher. Anyway, let me go to the phones. First up is Darren, who's been on hold for over an hour. Hey, Darren, thanks for your patience and welcome to the show.
No, actually, I haven't been on hold that long.
Oh, you're a minute. Oh, you know, I thought that said an hour. Sorry. Well, anyway, you skipped to the head of the queue because of my dyslexia. But anyway, welcome to the show.
Hey, I used to have a favorite actor till a few minutes ago. I thought, I mean, he was a great actor. He had us all fooled, thought he was more intelligent than that.
Well, he is a great actor, and my point is Morgan Freeman has risen. He is extremely successful because America is not a racist society. His success proves it.
Right. Anyway, hey, I wanted to comment about your last guest. I just caught the tail end of the conversation. I assume he was a CPA defending his profession. I mean, he has a subsidized profession. I mean, it's his profession exists, at least in the capacity of doing taxes, only through government force. I mean, he's completely subsidized.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he is conflicted. I think deep down he tries to understand that the nation would be better off if we had no income tax and we didn't have to have firms like his. it's like, look, I mean, would we be better off if there were never any fires and we didn't have to have a fire department? Yeah, of course it'd be better if we didn't have fires, if fires didn't exist. But since they do exist, we want to put them out. And so we need a fire department. It would be better if nobody ever got sick and we didn't need doctors. But, of course, we get sick, so we need doctors. But fires happen on their own. Illnesses happen on their own. Taxes is something we do to ourselves. We don't have to have the income tax. It's not coming from God. It's coming from us. And so this is a self-inflicted wound that we would be better off without. But obviously, since the wound is there, my guest is able to benefit. He has created a business to benefit. Now, just like me, just like my business, Europe Pacific Capital. I mean, my strategy is to help protect Americans from, all the bad things that the Congress and the Federal Reserve are doing. Now, obviously, if the government started doing everything right, I would have to change my business strategy. I don't think I would be out of business because I could just as easily have people invest here in America, and I would prefer that actually. But yeah, there are some businesses. If you running a tax business and there's no more income tax, you got to find something else to do. And he's a bright guy. It's not that the only thing he can do is help people save on their taxes. I mean, accounting used to be an honorable profession. There were a lot of cost accountants. Accountants can do a good job helping businesses control and minimize their costs. But unfortunately, some of the brightest accounting minds are not doing that. Instead, they're trying to help people minimize their taxes.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the legal profession. I mean, the common man doesn't really have access to the courts because because he's got to hire an attorney. You got to hire a CPA to get through the tax system. It's all BS in my opinion. But thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you. And part of the problem though with the court system is when it comes to suing your employer, for example, it's very easy for the common man to get a lawyer. There's contingency lawyers lining up to sue people's employers. Can we get rid of that? The governments have made it very easy to file frivolous lawsuits against your employer. I mean, when you go into court and you're the employer, you're automatically the bad guy. I mean, you're already behind the eight ball right off the bat, again, which is one of the reasons that people try not to be employers because they don't want to get involved in litigation or they don't want to be shaken down by an attorney where they have to pay into a frivolous lawsuit because they don't want the aggravation of a lawsuit, and so they pay the protection money to avoid it. Anyway, Charles is next caller. He's on hold from New York City. Charles, welcome to the show.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
I first want to say that you have really helped me out a lot in terms of my knowledge of economics. I've read your books, Crash Proof, How the Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. I read your.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot for that. Hey, can you hold on? We got a break coming up. We'll be right back and take your question. We've got open lines if anybody else wants to call 855-4SHIFT, 855-4SCHIFF. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You rile me up yourself.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Wrong soul, like you never did before. You did so, and you get in through my door.
We now return to the Peter Schiff Show. Call in now, 855-4SHIFT. That's 855-472-4433. Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
This is Peter Schiff. You're listening to the Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com. On the line now is Charles in New York City. Charles, continue with your question.
Yes, Peter, thank you for taking my call again. As I was saying earlier, I've become a big fan of yours. I've read your books, Crash Proof and Why an Economy Grows and How Economy Grows, Why It Crashes. I've been learning a lot from your weekly videos that you put out on YouTube and just really become a big fan.
We actually won an award in Germany, my brother and I, for the book, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. My brother's going to go out there I think in the month of November, and formally accept that award at a ceremony. So it's interesting. I wrote the book. We wrote the book in English. We didn't get any awards here in America, but they're giving us an award in Germany. So that's interesting.
That's very cool. It's a fantastic book, really fantastic book. And
yeah, even though they're all American characters, I was, you might be surprised that the Germans would recognize all these American politicians.
Well, Bernanke clearly today is very infamous for obvious reasons. But I've been heavily invested in gold and silver for obvious inflationary concerns. And, of course, the past couple of days, I, as well as many other commodity investors, have been hit severely hard. And, you know, the concerns about the sovereign debt crisis in Europe is sparking not only a rally in the dollar, but also a crash in gold. And I've been reading a few analyst reports online that some professionals think that gold could crash down to $1,100. So
yeah, well, look, I think the 1,100 quote came from Mark Faber. In fact, I've got some sound. I'll play that now of Mark Faber bringing up 1,100 for the price of gold, although he didn't necessarily forecast that it would go down there. But let me play that while you're on hold. It's cut number 1.
Well, I think that both the equity market and the gold market have become very oversold, and sentiment has turned extremely negative. So I think that the rebound is occurring. I'm not sure I'm going to buy this rebound, because following this rebound that I expect to get underway this week, I think we may drift lower towards the lows of a year ago, say 1,010 on the S&P. I'd be happier to buy below 1,100. Gold probably around this level is quite oversold, and I will consider buying some gold in the next 2 days.
Yeah, when I think he mentioned the 1,100, I don't know that he was even talking about gold. He might have been talking about the 1,010 on the S&P, but he said he would be happier to buy below 1,100, even if he was talking to gold. Not necessarily that he thinks it's going to get there, because he just said that he was planning on buying some gold in the next 2 days. So I don't know that he's actually looking for 1,100. But you know, none of my clients, as far at least my clients could have money at other brokers, but certainly on paper, nobody lost, in quotes, more money in the metal markets than me, right, in the last week. And it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, if you see me on video, you're seeing me. I've been buying stocks in my own account as I've been doing this show. I've been buying mining stocks this morning. I bought some more on Friday. I'm just adding to my position. I don't consider it losing money when the stocks go down because I'm not selling any of them. I don't expect them to stay down. I think the people who are selling gold and gold stocks are making a big mistake. So it doesn't bother me. I'm not keeping score every day. And I know I have to acknowledge that, yes, I can always go back and say, gee, if only I would have sold all my stocks last week, I could have bought them back. Yeah, of course, I mean, you'll knock your brains out with the woulda, coulda, shouldas, right? If only I would have done that, I could have done this, I should have done that. You only know what you coulda, woulda, shoulda done after the fact. It's a very different story before the fact. Now, if you want to be a trader, look, I've told people, look, you can have gold and silver stocks for the long run, and then you can have some trading stocks if you want to trade. I mean, I'm not trying to be a trader for people. I'm trying to tell people where I think their money needs to be long term. And the people who are losing money, yeah, there are people who have lost money because they were on leverage and they had to sell, or because they bought options that expired worthless. So, yes, there are people losing money. But if you just happen to own bullion for the long term, if you own gold stocks for the long term, I don't regard this as a loss. Now, if it really is the beginning of a bear market, if the highs are in and we're just going to keep falling for years, then that would be true. Then I guess we are losing money. But if we end up making new highs, if gold is even higher 6 months from now or less than it is today, if gold stocks are higher, then did we lose any money? I mean, we lost the opportunity of making more money had we traded it, but we also might have traded our way into a loss. Who knows? There are a lot of people that might have sold that by the time they buy back, they might end up shooting themselves in the foot because they sold. Who knows?
Right. And Peter, my question is, what is your argument for gold? In other words, the argument for gold is inflationary concerns. But my question is, doesn't the let's say Europe crashes, let's say they let Greece crash, and let's say Germany decides not to help, and let's say they let Italy go. Doesn't that mean a dollar rally and just a crash for gold? And doesn't that overpower your inflationary concerns?
No, I don't think so. I think if they let Greece fold, that's bullish for the euro, personally. I think it means less euros will be created. It means that the people who are holding Greek debt aren't going to get the euros that they were promised to get. It means a contraction in the supply of euros, which should be bullish for the euro against the dollar. But is it going to be bullish for gold or bearish for gold? That's a little bit different, but you're not going to get the strength of the dollar. But I think that if you look at one of the reasons that what triggered this recent gold sell-off was Ben Bernanke's saying that, hey, the economy has substantial downside risks, and the only thing we're going to do about it is Operation Twist, which, if you really understand it, is actually bad for the banks. It wasn't good for the banks, and people want more inflation. They want more money printing, and now all of a sudden they think that Ben Bernanke is going to turn off the spigots. I don't think he is. I think he's still bluffing. But also, remember, the fact that Ben Bernanke is saying that the economy is weaker than he thought, it's not weaker than I thought. The reason I'm buying gold is precisely because I believe the economy is a train wreck. I think we are in a depression, and a weak economy is not bad for gold. That's the market is saying that a weak economy is bad for gold. It's bullish for gold because if I'm right, the weak economy means more money printing. And it's more money printing that is why we're buying gold in the first place. So I am not concerned about the decline. It's not shaking my conviction. I'm more convinced than ever, and I just welcome the opportunity to continue to help people get out of paper and into metals and into other currencies. Look, the dollar has had a big rally across the board against some of my favorite currencies. That simply means that it's, people in America have a better opportunity to get rid of their dollars at better exchange rates to buy currencies that I believe when this crisis finally ends will be much, much more valuable relative to the dollar than not only than they are today, but than they were a couple of weeks ago before the correction started.
Can you just speak more on the exact relation between the crisis in Europe and gold as opposed to money printing and gold? What relationship do you think there is between the crisis in Europe right now and gold?
Well, I think right now the crisis in Europe is causing demand for the dollar, which is hurting temporarily gold. But I think more important is the leverage, the higher margin requirements, short-term liquidation. Because remember, just a few weeks ago, the European crisis was bullish for gold. People were buying gold because they were worried about the European crisis. So I think what's really happening is a bunch of noise. I mean, the long-term trend for gold is being driven by reckless money printing all around the world, by central bankers, by artificially low interest rates, by a destruction in the value of fiat currencies. That trend is continuing. It's ongoing. But in the short run, you get volatility because there is so much leverage sloshing around in the metals markets with all the hedge funds and all the ETFs and everything that's going on. There's a lot of short-term traders that are fixated on the price of things, and the markets will move. And this is going to put a lot of fear in the market. I pointed out earlier that I thought a couple weeks ago that the gold stocks are finally breaking out. We'll see. I mean, they've held up okay in this decline relative to gold, but we'll see if people still have the guts to buy these gold stocks because, look, this has been a sharp decline. I mean, they say that markets take the stairs up and the elevator down. I mean, it looks like the silver market missed the elevator and just fell right down the shaft. That's going to scare a lot of people who might have otherwise bought some silver stocks who are going to be afraid of the next shoe dropping. So, but I think this type of movement, this is par for the course. I've been buying gold and gold stocks for over 10 years, and we've had plenty of violent declines, none of which I've traded. I mean, I haven't, shorted the market. I've just been a buyer for 10 years. But what I have seen is that every time we have a big shakeout like this, it brings all the bubble guys out, all the guys, oh, we told you so, it's too risky, get out, you're going to get crushed. And it creates this wall of worry that the bull market is scaling. And that's how bull markets work. They want to make it hard. They don't want to make it easy. It's not like, hey, you just buy gold and you automatically make money. There is short-term risk, and I think it keeps the speculators in check. But I think this is the ingredients that build bull markets. And I see nothing about today's decline, to me anyway, that looks any different from any one of a number of violent sell-offs that I've witnessed over the past decade. And every time we've gone on and made new highs. Now, we still haven't made new highs from silver when it hit 50. And of course, just because it happened in the past, hey, doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But hey, you got to try to figure out a game plan. And I think that when it comes to precious metals, the best game plan is buy these dips.
And do you think that the printing trend will also happen in Europe? I mean, I know it's going to happen in the U.S., and I think that Bernanke will do a QE3. But what about Europe? What about the money printing in Europe? What's going on there?
Well, yeah, it is going to continue, but at a slower pace. I think they're not going to print as many euros as we're going to print dollars, which is why I think the dollar is going to lose ground against the euro. And I also think, Switzerland recently just basically pegged its currency to the euro. I'm sure that behind the scenes, Europe must have given the Swiss some kind of assurance that they weren't going to trash their currency. After all, I don't think the Swiss would have adopted that policy had they not had some kind of under-the-table reassurance from Europe. But anyway, hey, that's just my guess. But don't go away. Hey, we got another segment coming up. We got a lot of people on hold. I'll try to get to everybody. You're listening to Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. Since the Peter Schiff Show was last on the air, the national debt added another $7.89 million. Luckily, Peter's intelligence is growing twice as fast.
That's incredible.
Welcome back to your source of sanity in an insane world. It's the Peter Schiff Show.
This is Peter at SchiffRadio.com, and before I go back to the phones, I want to play one quick Obama clip. We actually had a lot of these Obama clips. I didn't get a chance to play many of them, but there's one I just wanted to play at, just a quick one. And this is not a black-white thing, but this is a Democrat-Republican political correctness hypocritical thing where the president gets a pass for saying something that a Republican would never get a pass for by the media. Let's listen to this. Listen closely to what President Obama says here. Cut number 8.
When you start saying at a time when the top 0.1% has seen their incomes go up 4 or 5 times over the last 20 years, and folks at the bottom have seen their incomes decline, and your response is that you want poor folks to pay more? Give me a break. If asking a billionaire to pay the same tax rate as a janitor makes me a warrior for the working class, I wear that with a badge of honor. I have no problem with that.
Okay, so you hear that Freudian slip there. Give me a break if asking a billionaire to pay the same tax rate as a Jew. Now, and then he says a janitor. Now, I mean, Jew and janitor don't even sound the same. But what I think was probably happening in Obama's mind is when he was thinking about all the billionaires that he doesn't think are paying taxes, or the people who aren't paying enough taxes, he was thinking about the Jews, right? The Jews are making all this money, and they're not paying taxes. So that's in the back of his mind. And so it slipped out because when he had a J for janitor, in his mind he was thinking Jew from before when he was talking about all the rich people not paying their fair share, and so the word Jew just slipped out. Now, where is outrage? Can you imagine if this was a Republican? All the anti-Semites and all the cries would have come out about saying that the president is an anti-Semite for thinking that the Jews are, there's always a typical Jew stereotype. Jews are rich, Jews are cheap. Those cheap Jews, they don't want to pay their fair share of taxes. Of course, I'm Jewish myself, and Jewish New Year's actually coming up this week. But or is that next week? I don't know. It's coming up. No, it is this week on Thursday. But I don't want to pay taxes, not because I'm a Jew. I don't think the Gentiles want to pay taxes either. Nobody wants to pay all these taxes. We don't mind paying legitimate taxes for legitimate functions of government, but not for what the government is doing today. But it's interesting that this little thing slipped out, and the president really just skates by without any kind of outrage. I mean, personally, I wouldn't jump all over him either for it. But, I'm sure if this was George Bush who had given this speech and made that statement, it would be all over national news. Anyway, let me see if I can bring in some calls. First up, Sean calling from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. I wanted to get your thoughts on this smash that's going on in the metals. It seems to be a paper smash and not physical. You look around and there's premiums are going up.
Oh, yeah, I've been talking about it all show. But, yeah, from what I can tell, I've talked to people in the industry that there's a lot of demand now on the dip, and people are running out of supplies. And, we're not getting a bunch of liquidation at Europac Metals or at Europe Pacific Capital through the Perth Mint. So, yes, this is not the physical market. This is a speculator market. It's a leverage market. That's who's selling. The real money, the smart money, is buying. You're correct. And I was like, that's why I look at this as an opportunity. A lot of people thought that the silver train left the station. Hey, well, it's pulling back to let a few more people on board, before it really takes off. So your point is well taken. Let me see if I can be quick. John next, calling from Tampa, Florida. Hey, John, were you there for the debates?
No, I missed the debate, but I watched it on TV. I liked 4 minutes of it when Ron Paul was speaking.
Yeah, well, it's always great when Ron speaks. Anyway, in fact, for those of you that are in New York, I will be in New York City tonight at Webster Hall. There's a Ron Paul fundraiser going on there. I will be speaking. So if anybody is in New York, come on down to Webster Hall. I'm sure it'll be packed, but it's always a fun time over there, and it'll be a good night.
Well, and if we got rid of the war and the military bases overseas and the fiat money system where we pay interest on money that never existed anyway, we wouldn't even need the income tax. As accountants, and when I had my manufacturing business, I would have died for a cost accountant to help me figure out where to put my attention. But they were, I'm so busy, it's the truck season. We never could do anything. And then I used to follow your dad, and I didn't play their game for 10 years. And when I had to take on an investor, and he was going to, anyway, long story short, I had to pay a tax attorney $12,000 deposit retainer, he called it, just to take my call.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of accountants can work on.
Nothing ever happened. He got $12,000 for nothing.
Yeah, if we didn't have the government guaranteeing everything, we could have more jobs for accountants, just verifying the accuracy of banks' balance sheets and corporate statements, and helping investors to ferret out the frauds from the good opportunities. But too many of our accountants are wasting their talents trying to help Americans understand the tax code, which is a complete waste. Not only the taxation, but the compliance costs, which is another reason to be in favor of abolishing the income tax entirely. Although, hey, I'll take Herman Cain's 999 plan over what we got today in a heartbeat. 9% flat tax is a lot better than this progressive monstrosity we got now. But anyway, hey, thanks for the call. Last caller is going to be Nate calling from Greensboro, North Carolina. Nate, welcome to the show.
Hey, Peter. Thanks for having me. My question is about all this pullback in the precious metals market that I'm seeing is also, I agree with you, it's totally an opportunity to buy. But I'm pretty new to it. My wife and I don't have much money at all, so we're buying silver right now. The question is, in a year, I know no one has a crystal ball, but I know in some of your books you talk about having a little bit of currency on hand for an emergency, and so we're trying to build up for that. But how do you do that versus buying silver when it's still cheap?
Yeah, well, I think this is we're below 30 right now. I think this is the good area. Is it possible? Could silver go down to the lower 20s? I guess it's possible. I'm not going to say that it can't happen. I think it's likely that it won't go down there, but I would just be buying more if it did. But, you can keep buying. You average in as you have more money. Turn it into real money by buying silver. Just make sure and get my report online at goldscams.com. Don't fall for the numismatic con or these rare coins or these phony numismatic coins with these huge markups by all these firms that advertise so heavily on radio and TV and the Internet. So make sure you buy the real thing. Don't get conned, but take advantage of the opportunities. That's my opinion. Anyway, hey, we've come to the end of the show. A lot of volatility. Dow up 170 now. We'll see what happens. I will be back again tomorrow for another 2 hours of the Peter Schiff Show here at SchiffRadio.com, the gold standard in talk radio.